Coming up, it was a big day for the NL East. We saw the Mets sign a big starter. We saw the Phillies make a move as well. So I'm going to give you my reaction to those deals. And then we got part two with Sully Baseball discussing if there were any other members that should have made it on the contemporary ballot to the MLB Hall of Fame and discussing Jacob deGrom to the Rangers, all on today's Locked On Diamondbacks podcast.
You are Locked On Diamondbacks, your daily Arizona Diamondbacks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Listening to who? The always charismatic host of this podcast, Millard Thomas. I'm a multimedia journalist and I'm a graphic designer, so please go check out my website, millardthomas24.myportfolio.com. On there, you can see all my latest work, from my packages to my articles to my photos and my graphic design. If you want to see more content by me, just follow me on Twitter at CreatorThomas24 for my personal account. We'll just look up Locked On Diamondbacks on both Twitter, Instagram for the podcast handle. And of course, thank you for making Locked On Diamondbacks your first listen every day. I'll not be able to do this podcast without you, my loyal listeners, sharing, subscribing, reviewing, doing all that so I could do this podcast for you. Thank you. It's free and available on all platforms, so please continue to tell your friends. One of those platforms I need more help on is YouTube, so please hit subscribe on the Locked On Diamondbacks YouTube channel because we are trying to grow the subscriber count and we're getting pretty close to 300 subscribers, so want to hit that before Christmas. It'll be a wonderful Christmas gift to myself, so please hit subscribe on the Locked On Diamondbacks YouTube. But today, we're going to be talking a whole bunch of free agency, deGrom, Justin Verlander, Trea Turner. But for the YouTube audience, this video will only cover the Justin Verlander and Trea Turner signings. I have a part two on YouTube with the deGrom to Rangers talk. So if you're interested in the deGrom Rangers talk, check out the Locked On Diamondbacks YouTube channel because that video will also be posted a couple hours after this video is posted. But for the audio audience, the audio listeners, you will hear me talk about everything on today's podcast because I first want to start off talking about the NL East because the NL East did not mess around today, Monday, December 5th. I don't know why the NL East decided to wake up and choose violence, but that's exactly what they did because once again, the NL East is trying to send 3 playoff teams from that division to the playoffs next season because if you forgot, the Braves, the Mets, and the Phillies were all NL East teams that made the playoffs this past year. And now the real question is the NL East the best division in the National League? And is it the best division in baseball? Because I first need to start with the Philadelphia Phillies because the Phillies directly affect the question, is the NL East the best division in baseball? Because they stole Trea Turner from the Los Angeles Dodgers, and maybe steal is too strong of a word because they paid Trea Turner a lot of money. 11 years, $300 million, and a full no-trade clause. Now, the silver lining, if you're a Phillies fan and if you think that's too expensive, Spotrac, I think, had him projected around $33.5 million. So technically, you got Trea Turner on a discount. I think Trea Turner didn't mind taking under his projected market value. When you get 11 years, most baseball players will take less annually if they get those extra years of security. If I was a baseball player, I would do all the Max Scherzer and Justin Verlander deals, the Trevor Bauer deals. Just give me $100 million for, 2 years, 3 years, and I'll just rather keep re-signing every 3 years. I don't know why baseball players haven't done that yet, because every time a baseball player signs a long contract, they're immediately talked about in a negative light about how the second half of that deal is going to be an albatross and how they're going to be declining the second half of that deal. Just sign 3 to 5 year deals where you'll get more money annually, and then you can re-sign once your deal is up. I guess baseball players are really worried about injury or something in a sport where the injury risk is very minimal, and most of the injuries just deal with your fingers or like a cramp or something like that. So don't understand why these MLB free agents get coached to go after long-term deals instead of short-term deals with more money. But hey, I'm not an MLB agent, so I don't know why these players do that. But for Trea Turner, I like the move to the Philadelphia Phillies. Despite how long the deal is, like we were just talking about, at least those first 6 years of the deal, I think is going to be really good for Trea Turner. And he's also the kind of player, even as his speed diminishes, he's been a pure contact hitter throughout his entire major league career. Underrated pop as well, elite defense. Like, this is someone that I think can decline gracefully as his speed starts to decline too. And just something that's really fun about this Trea Turner to Philadelphia news, he's once again reunited with his brother Bryce Harper. I think Bryce Harper was a big proponent of bringing in Trea Turner, a big recruiter in bringing in Trea Turner to Philadelphia. So these two are reunited once again. And now when you look at that lineup for the Philadelphia Phillies, they arguably have the best postseason offense last season. But now you got Trea Turner mixed in with Bryce Harper, a Reese Hoskins, a Kyle Schwarber, a Nick Castellanos, a Alec Baum, and a Bryson Stott, who really wasn't there for the first half of last year. Came on strong in the second half. A rookie. Bryson Stott's probably going to be moving from shortstop to second base to accommodate for Trea Turner. Phillies still need to figure out the bullpen and get another starter most likely in that rotation, but the offense should be deadly once again. And we know defense has been a problem for the Phillies. Trea Turner is going to help them out in that area. So I do like the move. Is it a long-term deal? I don't like deals that go over a decade, but considering Trea Turner is turning 30 years old, you will get the rest of the prime of Trea Turner, and that should at least last another 5 to 7 years. And then on the New York Mets, short-term deal, this is the opposite of the Trea Turner deal. An overpay, but on a very short-term deal for Justin Verlander. 2 years or a vesting option, I think, for that third year. And I'm pro overpaying for someone if it's a short-term deal. I don't mind giving Justin Verlander over $40 million annually, matching the Max Scherzer deal, because it's a short-term deal. And Verlander, I mean, he missed some time this past season. He missed all of 2021. So there's also some injury risk with Verlander, but because of the injuries he's dealt with the last 2 years, his arm probably is fresher than what it is for most 40-year-old pitchers. So I don't mind the Justin Verlander deal, because the Mets clearly had a plan in place once Jacob deGrom signed with the Texas Rangers. The Mets pivoted quickly. All the rumors were Justin Verlander is the top target, top priority. And within a day or two of the deGrom signing, the Mets got Justin Verlander. And they had to, because I talked about on the part 2 with Sully Baseball, their rotation was looking weak without this move. Because if you didn't sign a Justin Verlander, it was going to be Max Scherzer, Carlos Carrasco, David Peterson, and who else? But now Scherzer, Verlander, Carrasco, Peterson, and still got like a Tyler McGill, I guess. Now their rotation is looking pretty strong. And speaking of reunions, I don't think there's a more fun one. Like, Turner and Bryce Harper was cool, but I really love the Max Scherzer and Justin Verlander reunited the Detroit Tigers once again, because these two were both basically finishing first and second Cy Young voting when they were both in the Tigers rotation. And now they're doing it on the Mets, and they're both still pitching like they're at the peak of their powers, despite being damn near 40 or over 40, both pitching like they're still in the prime of their career. So I'm glad to see these two reunited once again. But for the Mets, a second starter, I don't think was their biggest need. They clearly needed someone to replace the Jacob deGrom, but they didn't lose in the first round last year because Jacob deGrom sucked. They lost last year in the playoffs because Max Scherzer was not good in that first playoff game. So if the Mets want to advance farther this year, they need Max Scherzer to step up in a big way. And Justin Verlander also himself has had some shaky postseason moments. Now, most of them have come in the World Series, but he's a guy with a little spotty history in the playoffs as well. So those two need, as they both are like two of the top 3 highest paid starting pitchers, I think now, at least 2 of the top 5. So when you got those two guys commanding more than half of your payroll, you need to advance far in the postseason. Even if you don't advance far, even if it's another first round knockout, it can't be because your 2 starters didn't perform. It has to be because your offense didn't do enough, and you're still paying guys like Francisco Lindor a whole ton of money in your offense. So this Mets team needs to pay off, because the Stephen Cohens of the world are paying a whole lot of money. I'm sure he doesn't want to see his team going out in the wild card round every single season. I do think the Mets will be good again next season. They just still have a bunch of holes in their rotation, bullpen, and lineup. Maybe not so much their lineup, but the Trevor Mays bullpen, Chris Bassett starter, Taijuan Walker starter, Brandon Nimmo center fielder, Nate Quinn, utility outfielder, Adam Ottavino Dominic Smith, Trevor Williams, all those guys are free agents for the Mets. So they got a big part of their roster just sitting in free agency. So they still are going to need to make a couple more moves before this whole thing is rounded out and fleshed out. But I like what the two NL East teams did. But now the biggest team I'm watching for this free agency, I think, has to be the LA Dodgers, because we saw the Yankees make their big move today by re-signing Brian Cashman. So we know they're still going to be in the Aaron Judge sweepstakes. But I think the biggest shark in the water, let me get my Arizona accent on, because water is how people in Jersey say it. That's where I'm from, of course. But I've been in Arizona now for more than a half decade. So let me correct myself, because I think the Dodgers are going to be the sharks in the water, because now I want to know if they're going to be in on a Carlos Rodon, because it seemed like the Dodgers are really in on Justin Verlander, but of course he signed with the Mets now. So are they going to turn their attention to Rodon, who's now the best starter left on the market? Are they going to try and replace a Trey Turner with a Carlos Correa, a guy who cheated against the Dodgers? That would be a fun narrative, bringing him in. Maybe they want to go after Xander Bogaerts, another team that allegedly cheated against you. You could bring him in. Or do you go after Dansby Swanson, a wild card team that knocked you out and won the World Series? All three of those would be good replacements for Trey Turner. Or do they want to make the splash of the summer and sign Aaron Judge? The Dodgers are the team to watch for the rest of the offseason. I'm very curious to see what big move they have hiding up their sleeves.